Hey everybody, my name's Jacob and welcome back to the channel. This week we're making a slow simmered bolognese made with San Marzano tomatoes, sweet Italian sausage, and ground beef. If you haven't already, check out my Instagram page here at Eating with Evans. This is where I post all my meals that you won't necessarily see here on the YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's go make some bolognese. The ingredients you're going to need for this recipe are 2 cans of San Marzano tomatoes. These are 28 ounces each, and they're DOP certified from the San Marzano region of Italy. You're going to also need a 4.5 ounce tube of double concentrated tomato paste. You're going to see later why the tube comes in handy over a can of tomato paste. You're going to need 1.5 sweet onions, 5 cloves of garlic, 2 medium carrots, 1 pound of 90% lean ground beef, 1 pound of sweet Italian sausage, about a cup of dry white wine, 5 or 6 bunches of fresh basil, some Parmigiano Reggiano that is going to be freshly grated. As always, you're going to want salt and pepper to taste. Some other dry herbs you'll want for this recipe are dried rosemary, oregano, and thyme. You're going to want about a tablespoon of each of those. The tools that we're going to need for this recipe are really quite simple. We need a chef's knife to do all of our dicing. We're going to need a wooden spatula during the cooking process. We need a Y peeler to peel our carrots. We're going to need a heavy Dutch oven, and we're also going to be utilizing a garlic press. We're going to start by peeling our carrots. What I like to do when peeling carrots is cut the tips off and peel. This is what all my carrots look like as they're all diced up. To dice the onion, I'm going to cut off each end, the root end and the top end. I'm going to cut down the middle, remove the peel, I'm going to cut along the equator of the onion. And now we've completed dicing our 1.5 onion. Next we're going to move on to the garlic. And what I learned recently about using a garlic press like this is that you don't actually need to peel the garlic in order to use it. I'm going to show you how to do that. So first you start by breaking the garlic up a little bit and removing some of the outside skin. You can see how much skin was removed from the outside when I start to peel this back, exposing all those individual cloves. So what we're going to do is break out some of these garlic cloves. Some of these are really small, so I'm just going to throw them in. Fill up this chamber with a couple pieces of garlic at a time. And then use the back of my knife. And I never even peeled it. And all that just gets left behind. It comes out perfect. You can just discard those skins and keep doing that. I was able to crush the garlic in my garlic press pretty quickly and pretty efficiently without having to take any of the skins off, and it took a lot less time. Very effective method. So now what we're going to do is work on crushing our tomatoes. We're just going to dump the tomatoes with clean hands, start crushing these tomatoes. We have this beautiful basil that we're gonna tie together into a bunch and we're gonna let it steep in the sauce. Now in order to do that, we need to take 5 bunches of basil, tie some kitchen twine around it, and that's gonna get thrown into the tomato sauce during the cooking process. And it's gonna add a good sweetness to the sauce. So I have between 5 and 6 stems of basil here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold it over so it's compressed. I'm gonna take about an arm's length of kitchen twine. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap this around a couple times so it stays. And then I'm just gonna tie a knot. The purpose of this is so that there aren't large pieces of basil falling out into the sauce. So retrieving this out of the sauce later after it's given up all of its good flavor is going to be a lot easier if it's bundled together in a bunch like this. Now that the mise en place is complete, we have our diced carrots, we have our 5 cloves of minced garlic, we used our garlic press which really sped up the process, we have our 5 stems of basil bunched together, and we have 1.5 diced onions. And we have our 2 28-ounce cans of San Marzano tomatoes crushed between my hands. Now we're ready to start cooking the sauce. Now we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil to this pan. This olive oil is gonna help with the browning. And we're gonna add 1 pound of ground beef. So now that all this ground beef has browned up, I'm gonna pull it. It's not fully cooked, but we're gonna add this back into the sauce and it's gonna simmer for hours. So it doesn't need to be fully cooked at this point. And now we're gonna add in our 1 pound of sweet Italian sausage. I'm going to try and leave the sausage in big chunks and I'm going to let it brown up in the pan. So now that the sausage is mostly done, we're going to take it out of the pan. Now we're going to add our onions and our carrots. So now that we've let the onions and the carrots cook for between 2 and 3 minutes, you can see that the onions have started to give off a little bit of moisture and the carrots have started to soften up a little bit. So now we're going to add in our 5 cloves of garlic. We're going to stir that in. We're going to let that simmer for about a minute just so the raw bite of the garlic can cook off. To deglaze the pan, we're going to use 1 cup of white wine. When you deglaze a pan, you want to scrape the bottom to get all the fond off the bottom of the pan. When we browned that meat, it left a crust on the bottom of this pan, and we're using the white wine and my wooden spatula to scrape all of that delicious flavor off the bottom. I'm going to let this cook for a minute to cook the raw flavor of the alcohol out of the wine. Now that the alcohol's had a chance to cook out of the wine, we're going to add in our San Marzano tomatoes. We've added in our 2 28-ounce cans of San Marzano tomatoes, and we stirred that to combine. We're going to bring this up to a simmer, and we're going to add our tube of tomato paste. This is double concentrated, and it's 4.5 ounces. We're using a tube here because a can of tomato paste is a lot harder to get the contents out of. With a tube, all you have to do is squeeze, just like a toothpaste tube, and it comes out a lot easier. What this tomato paste is going to do is it's going to add a punch of tomato flavor to this sauce that is going to reduce the amount of cooking time required. Normally with a tomato sauce like this, you have to cook it for 6 or 8 hours. By adding the tomato paste, we'll only have to simmer the sauce for between 1 and 2 hours to get the result that we wanted. After adding the tomato paste, we're going to add our meat back in. And now we want to add around 20 ounces of water. And I'm just using the tomato can to measure that. And lastly, we're going to add our bunch of basil. Now you're going to want to bring this to a simmer. Once this mixture comes to a simmer, you're going to want to reduce the heat to medium-low, and you're going to want to stir it every few minutes. To speed up this process, I'm going to add the lid, and I'm going to leave it a little bit ajar so that the steam can escape. This has been simmering for about an hour. As you can tell, the color's darkened a good amount because we boiled off a large amount of moisture. We're gonna let this cook for another hour or so until the color darkens and the sauce thickens. The sauce has been simmering for 2 hours. You can tell that the color has darkened. There's been a lot of moisture driven off. You can tell it's a lot thicker than it was 2 hours ago. We're gonna pull out all of this basil because it's given up all the flavor that it can give. Now we're going to grate around a 1/4 cup of fresh Parmesan cheese. Now that we've incorporated that Parmesan cheese, you can tell that the color has changed a lot. It's kind of flattened out, become a little bit more matte because of all the fat that we've added. Now we're going to taste for seasoning. Up until this point, we haven't added any salt. I wanted to wait until we put the Parmesan cheese in to see how much seasoning we had to add. So I'm going to add a good portion of salt, probably a couple tablespoons. There's a lot of tomato sauce here, so it's going to take a lot of salt in order to season it. Now I'm going to add some freshly grated pepper. Alright, so this is the final dish. This is a slow cooked bolognese that took a little over 2.5 hours from start to finish. The prep time for the vegetables and cooking the meats ahead of time is around 30 minutes, so look for a total of 2.5 hours to complete this recipe. You can tell that the simmering did something because there's been a total change in color. It's gotten a lot thicker. As it's cooled, it started to set up, and this would go great on top of any kind of pasta. If you guys like that recipe for my easy slow simmered bolognese as much as I do, be sure to hit the like button below. If you want to see more content from me on a weekly basis, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you're notified as soon as I put out a new video. Until next time. Want to say hi? Want to give me kisses? Oh. Alright, bye.